Federal Executive Council approves establishment of National ICT Park. House of Representatives to scale down bills on establishment of new agencies. Nigerian manufacturers seek policy review, rates unification. Plus, CBN instructs banks to accept permissible ideas for refugees. This is Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we are reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. Good to have you join us at this time. The Federal Executive Council has approved the establishment of the National ICT Park in Abuja, the nation's capital. The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Isa Ali Pantami, disclosed this while briefing journalists after the council's meeting.
And the wisdom behind National ICT Park is to be a center where all other public and private ICT hubs and centers are going to be coordinated by the federal government of Nigeria, where we identify our young innovators with crazy and disruptive ideas. We mentor them. Government will provide the necessary support they need. We provide the enabling environment for them to come and utilize, and if they come up with any startup, they can be supported by the federal government of Nigeria.
Still on Federal Executive Council, the federal government has approved the execution of a memorandum of understanding between Federal Ministry of Information and Culture as well as the Central Bank of Nigeria Bankers Committee for the rehabilitation and revitalization of the National Theatre Igamu, Lagos. Also approved is the sum of 9.4 billion naira for the completion of the digital switchover project. Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed announced these approvals at a media briefing after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council.
It's going to be a turning point in the creative industry in the sense that we are going to have a brand new national theatre. At completion, will now become the #1 event center in Africa, and this is going to boost the creative industry, Nollywood, music, arts and fashion. As part of the resolve of this government to create at least 1 million jobs in the next 3 years.
The World Organization's General Council is set to consider the appointment of the next Director General. Adebola Brooksland Sunday reports that experts from various countries have expressed full confidence in the trade body's first African female Director General, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala became the sole candidate for the job after the second candidate, Yoo Myung-hee of Korea, backed down from the contest. The General Council has slated a special meeting for 15th February for the consideration of the next head of the organization. Experts believe that a fair and favorable trade environment will be built under her leadership.
I think Ngozi, who I know very well from various relationships in the past will be a very good leader.
For Professor Xiao Geng at Peking University's HSBC Business School, the position of President Joe Biden's administration might lead to the U.S. returning to multilateralism.
China is expecting that WTO to play an important role in the future, but the crucial is really the U.S. And I think now we see the signal that the U.S. also want to create, a good global environment for trade.
Dean, Center for International Business Ethics at the University of International Business and Economics, Liu Bocheng, treating the WTO as a battleground will hurt its credibility.
And there has to be a consensus that the trade war will hurt everybody, and not only between China and the United States, but also the rest of the world.
The United States has expressed strong support for Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, citing her experience at the World Bank and leading Nigeria's finance ministry.
Announced the endorsement of Nigerian renowned economist and former finance minister Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala for the World Trade Organization's top job. It is as good as done that she is Director General Designate of the WTO. The coast cleared for her ascendance after her only contender and trade minister of South Korea, Yo Young-hee, backed out from the race early February. As a lone contender already endorsed by all 164 members of the WTO, it is a matter of when she would be announced the DG. How will her office assist in reviving world trade amid COVID-19 shall be the focus of Business Express for today. And to do justice to this topic is an economist, Paul Alaje. Mr. Paul, you're welcome to Business Express.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you so much for having me.
Okay, well, let's begin our conversation now that the coast is clear for Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala to assume the position of the WTO DG. What does this mean for Nigeria and the continent of Africa?
Well, good news, because when we first consider what it means for the world, recall that before COVID, there was a trade war between the United States and China. Former President Donald Trump had identified that over $500 billion was trade deficit between America and China, and the trade deficit was in favor of China. So Donald Trump at that time had imposed a lot of increase in tariff charges on all Chinese goods. And at that time, we mentioned, and I remember I had a conversation on your television station, among other television stations, where I mentioned that if we have any exogenous disruption, the global economy will crumble. Nobody saw COVID coming. COVID came, and already an environment that was very fragile was totally crumbled by COVID. Many countries in recession, those not in recession, their growth rate slashed by over 50%. Now, what is the good news for the world? Dr. Okonjo-Iweala is known to be fair and to be professional. So I'm sure there is that high level confidence on a person and also a capacity. This is not the first time she's taking a top position in an international organization. She did this while she was at World Bank, and I am very confident also that she will do it. This is also coming at a time when Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement has just been put in place. In beginning of this year, African countries have started trading among one another, and even though the guideline to make all of this become more robust isn't being worked on, and I'm also very happy that the person in charge of all of this to make inter-trade within Africa increase is now one of us. Now, the real thing for me is the impact of this on Nigeria. We all know that our exports apart from oil, is relatively low due to standardization and so many other reasons. And also, another thing that's affected us so much has been negotiation by those who have represented us. So Dr. Iweala is not just experienced. Dr. Iweala as the Minister of Finance, we have seen sporadic growth when she was Minister of Finance in 2014, when we have our highest growth in recent time. And we have also seen impact on World Bank. We saw how Nigerian debt was forgiven, particularly debts that are multinational in nature. So I'm very confident that our position will have positive impact on Nigeria in the coming period.
Well, with a ripe soil provided for cultivation, if I can say that, do you see her making that impact, you suppose, amid COVID-19?
I strongly believe she will make that impact. I also want to advise local authority, Nigeria authority, to put the right foundation in place, because for us, President Buhari have said he wants to increase exports, which is a right thing to do, so that our central bank will not continue to struggle to defend Naira. So if we put policy in place to support export, it is easier than ever that we have one of our own at the ends of affairs, so that we can have significant exports, save the soul of Naira, and also earn more in terms of US dollar. So for me, I think the foundation is there. COVID or not, China has exported more in recent time. COVID or not, we have seen that India has refused to go into a recession. Why? Because this country has been positioned for trade. They kept exporting face masks, they kept exporting sanitizers, they kept exporting all of this. So we have the population, we have the number. All we need to do is to put our house in order, build the foundation, and policies, I'm sure, we always support Nigeria. You know the good news, unlike before, where we asked, quote and unquote, permit me to use this analogy, Mr. Macaroni, that popular comedian, to fight with AJ, Anthony Joshua, in a boxing ring. We all know that Mr. Macaroni, we understand this is not funny. Why have I said that? Developing country on one hand have been told to engage in a trade war with developed countries. Yeah. Why? Because most of the representatives have been developed, have come from developed world. So they don't understand the challenges of power supply, challenges of infrastructure. Now, Dr. Iweala is representative of not just Nigeria, but the entire African developing countries. She understands when we say there is no power. She understands where concessions should be given and special consideration should be given to African countries. And I am happy that we have one of our own, not because of our color, but because of the content of our understanding and what I know she can deliver.
Okay, then, still talking specifics on the issues of supporting exports. Africa scarcely has goods to trade with the world, if you agree with me. And the reason is that the continent's export quota was just about 2.4% of world volume in 2018, with the sub-Saharan Africa holding only like 1.7% of that. Even when Africa, the bloc trades only is like 16%, made in Africa goods, while the EU has as much as 64%, and about 67% of their goods are in our market. What do you see as the game up for us? And with the AFCFTA, we are looking at Chinese products coming into this market. How competitive would Africa be?
Well, the WTO chief, talking about Dr. Kojo Iweala, in a matter of months or days, I'm sure that will be confirmed. So she will do her job. She will provide the ground for African and African leaders to take advantage of. But she will not construct road for us. She will not provide light for us. There are things that we must do. There are areas where we must take responsibility. There are policies Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Rwanda must make. There are policies Egypt must make for these countries within the continent to maximize opportunity that is now available to us. So if we don't do it, there is not just so much she will be able to do for us. So we have that good environment for us to try as Africans, but it's left in our hands and of course in the hands of our authority and government to do the needful. So for me, I am confident that of course some African countries, I only I hope that Nigeria will be part of this African country to maximize opportunities that is now before us, but something that cannot be taken away is transformation of the continent. So not the transformation of the continent's economy. But this is it. If all countries in Africa we carefully consider their position on ease of doing business, Nigeria is currently among the 130th position or so, but I'm hoping that we have more African countries join the top 20 around the globe on ease of doing business, access to credit, access to power supply, contract-related issues, etc., etc. These are the things I'm confident about, that if authorities in Nigeria and so many other countries, we rejig their economy, we restructure their economy, then we can say that we'll participate and benefit from one of our own being the chief of WTO.
Okay, while waiting for Nigeria and other African countries to put the desired infrastructure in place to support her office, what do you see her doing first as an immediate action as she hits the ground running, hopefully?
So one of the things I expect her to do is some level of settlement between the United States and China, the world powers, if you like, even though China has not been confirmed. But we all know that if China decide to shut down all the factory, any part of the world will suffer, not just developing country, even developed world, that have come to rely so heavily on China exports. So whether it is fake or it is authentic, it's not the game here, it's not the conversation here. So that said, the kind of restriction that some countries are put in place because of our experience as World Bank chief, and also somebody who has represented our decision in terms of financing of countries, Minister of Finance, former in Nigeria, not once but twice. She will put all of those together to first settle some of these trade disputes we have among countries. So that's the first thing I'm expecting. Secondly, I'm expecting some level of soft landing for African countries that want to trade with the rest of the world, so that the trade pattern will not just be one-sided. Recall that Africa has the largest number of resources in the entire continent, but the pricing is so very poor. So if we can improve on our pricing and we can get significant support from WTO, where unlike what we had in Cancun talks, where the West told Africans that there are some rates we cannot charge, they decide the quantity they want to buy, they also decide the price they will buy from us. But with one of us being at the end of affairs, I strongly believe that we can have a better negotiator, and Africans will be listened to in a different pattern.
Okay, looking at her experience from the World Bank and having served at the Federal Executive Council in Nigeria with the likes of the present AFDB president, talking about Adesina Akinwumi, do you see some sort of partnership at that high level to ensure that not just Nigeria but Africa gets a headway?
Yes, I think so. I think so, because when you look at what Akinwumi Adesina has done, you will see that Nigeria has benefited immensely, and not just Nigeria, the entire African country. And there seems to be new surge, new energy coming from African Development Bank. The two of them are Nigerian. I'm not saying this because they are Nigerian, but when you consider the competence of both individuals we are talking about, you know they are representative of what Nigeria is, and not a representative of what Nigeria is not. They are representative of African best. And I strongly believe, because they've served Federal Executive Council before, they were both part of Nigeria best growth rate, 7% in GDP. They were both part of Nigeria lowest unemployment. So they've worked first at a local level, talking about Federal Executive Council and the economy working together. One being Minister of Finance, the other being Minister of Agriculture. So I strongly believe they have some of relationship, because African Development Bank, we certainly need World Health Organization to achieve some goals and some desire in helping African export. What if Africa need anything more than ever before, particularly for different currencies, and if Africa will consider using single currency in the coming period? The position of Africa in World Trade Organization, and particularly the export Africa had, must significantly improve. And I hope that we are going to have just this among the two institutions, more so that they are led by Africans, and more importantly, Nigerians.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Paul Alaje. It's always a pleasure having you share your thoughts with us on this platform.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Welcome. Moving on our Surviving the COVID-19 segment for today is a story of a graphic artist who, despite the challenges posed by the pandemic, has continued to make ends meet.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
The COVID, we are aware that there was enforcement on restriction that people should not go to anywhere. That period, no alternative, eating what, at least somehow. I prefer business before COVID. During COVID was so worse. And after COVID, now the situation still remains. We've not gotten our balance now. And we have been succeeding, and it's been not this. There is a little bit of slowness in the business during the COVID because of financial stress and a lot of one thing or the other. But at least as a businessman, I see some connection you do online. People still get you engaged, call you, say how far. At least no matter how little, we are still coping through that. It's only the tense there will be a little bit lower than the normal time. That's just the main thing. We managed it throughout, and God has been wonderful.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, has expressed concern over the government's inability to meet its obligations in each appropriation year and the need to prune. Gbajabiamila, who gave the charge while welcoming members on the 2021 legislative session, tasked members on the need to be more circumspect, particularly on the bills seeking to establish new agencies, considering the exploring recurrent cost of governance.
Already in existence, and remove those no longer fit for purpose. I believe most sincerely that this is the pathway to a legacy that we can all be proud of.
Gold inched lower on Thursday as weaker U.S. inflation data diminished bullion's appeal, although a softer dollar and lower treasury yields kept the losses in check. Oil prices fell on Thursday, giving up some of the recent strong gains, although losses were capped by production cuts and hopes that rollout of vaccines would drive a recovery in demand. Brent crude fell 39 cents to $61.08 a barrel after touching its highest since January 2020 on Wednesday. U.S. crude slid 35 cents to $58.33 a barrel. Moving on, stocks in Asia Pacific dipped with multiple major markets in the region closed for holidays. Nneka Oko reports.
Trading in Asia Pacific was muted Thursday as multiple major markets in the region were closed for holidays. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index rose 0.45% on the day to 30,173.57, while markets in Hong Kong and Singapore ended their trading day earlier than usual on the eve of the Lunar New Year. Markets in China, Japan, South Korea and Taiwan were closed for holidays. European stocks opened flat on Thursday amid a pause in Wall Street rally and more muted trade in Asia Pacific due to the Lunar New Year holiday. London's FTSE is seen 2 points higher at the open at 6,524.36. Germany's DAX 2 points higher, CAC 40 of France 1 point higher. U.S. stock index futures rose in early morning trading as markets looked to continued February's momentum. Futures contracts tied to the Dow rose 62 points. S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq 100 futures also traded in mildly positive territory. African markets are yet to post numbers, but market watchers say investors are digesting recent meaty gains. Neka Oku, Business Express.
This is where we end this episode of the program. Don't forget you can access this and all previous episodes on YouTube. You can also communicate with us on Twitter. The handle is NTA News Now. The hashtag is BizX. We value your feedback. Do join us again on Friday at 3 p.m. for another package. I am Benny Adams saying stay safe.